Journalist Julian Assange faces 175 years in prison for exposing US war crimes. Now, if you weren't aware, last week, Julian Assange faced 2 days of hearings to decide whether the WikiLeaks founder may appeal a United States request for him to be extradited to the United States, where he faces a trial on 18 counts, including violating the Espionage Act over the WikiLeaks publication of classified documents. Now, I've got a stack of notes for you to go through this. I was outside the court alongside thousands of others last week in anticipation for what the trial may bring. Now, I'm going to go through some of the background to the case, a bit about who Julian Assange is, what this case means, and why it's important to pay attention. So sit back and take note. The United States is seeking to put the WikiLeaks founder on trial in the US for exposing its war crimes, which could set a precedent that the Espionage Act, which was established in 1917, could be used to prosecute journalists who publish information that the US government doesn't like. His lawyers say that if he's convicted, he could be given a sentence as long as 175 years. By the way, that's longer than most people, if not all people, are able to live. An estimate, it would be likely that he faces a sentence of 30 to 40 years, which would take him into his 19s. Nonetheless, his family believe that he will die in jail, or even perhaps before his trial, if he's extradited to the United States. He's been in custody in the maximum security HM Belmarsh prison since the charges were unsealed in 2019, where he's confined to his cell for 23 hours per day with just 1 hour of indoor recreation. Now, at this point, he's not actually been charged with anything in the United Kingdom. He's still facing trial in the United States, and he's living under these conditions. Ask yourself if that seems right to you. Now, who is Julian Assange? Well, Julian Assange is an Australian editor, publisher, and activist who founded WikiLeaks in 2006. WikiLeaks came to prominence in 2010 when it published almost 500,000 classified documents relating to the US wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, including a US military video which showed a 2007 attack by Apache helicopters in Baghdad that killed a dozen innocent people, including 2 Reuters news staff. Now, a little bit on the background of the case. In 2010, Sweden issued a European arrest warrant for Assange. Why are they getting involved? Well, some rape allegations were made against him. Many of his followers and legal team believe these are concocted to subvert justice. But he was eventually granted asylum by Ecuador, of all countries, in the United Kingdom on the grounds of political persecution. So from August 2012, Julian was captivated in a different way inside of the the Ecuadorian embassy. Now, the Swedish prosecutors later dropped the charges in 2019, but on the same year, Assange's asylum was withdrawn, where he'd held a position of relative security in London in this Ecuadorian embassy, and he was then arrested once that expired, and he was found guilty of breaching the Bail Act relating to the charges in Sweden. Now, the following month in May 2019, the US government unsealed new indictments against Assange, charging him of 18 counts, including violating the Espionage Act, over the WikiLeaks publication of classified documents, and alleging he had conspired with hackers to obtain this and distribute this information. Now, prosecutors argue that he conspired with the US Army intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to hack a Pentagon computer and release secret diplomatic cables and military files on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Despite facing a maximum sentence of 175 years, US prosecutors have said that his sentence would amount to no more than 63 months, but documented plans that the CIA explored how to kill Julian Assange would perhaps suggest otherwise. Now, last week's trial was the final legal bid to stop his extradition to the US, and it was held at the Royal Courts of Justice in London, and I was there. Now, what are the possible outcomes of this court case? We're still awaiting the judgment. We're expecting to hear in the first week or two of March. But if Assange wins this case, then he doesn't go free. That's important to understand that. He will then move to a full appeal hearing where he's again able to take his challenge to an escalated court. If he loses, however, if he loses this appeal, his only remaining option to avoid extradition would be to escalate the case to the European Court of Human Rights. And his wife, Stella Assange, has said that his lawyers are already primed to apply for an emergency injunction if necessary, because the reality is he could be on a plane to the United States within a matter of days if he loses the appeal. Now, get this. If you want to look at the potential state-level corruption involved in this trial, the judge set to rule on the Assange case was previously paid to represent the interests of MI6 and the Ministry of Defense, whose activities that the WikiLeaks publication had previously exposed. Now, not only this, Justice Jeremy Johnson has been a specially vetted barrister cleared by the United Kingdom authorities to access top secret information, the exact kind of information that both Assange and WikiLeaks would seek to expose. Now, not only this, Johnson has also represented the Ministry of Defense on at least 2 occasions. In 2013, he acted for the department during the high-profile inquiry which looked into the allegations of British soldiers' torture and unlawful killing of Iraqi prisoners in 2004. Now, the MOD lies said the Iraqi allegations were a product of lies, and by making the claims, they were guilty of criminal conspiracy. And Johnson, the judge involved, argued that there was compelling and extensive and independent forensic evidence to refute the case. And after a 5-year inquiry costing over £25 million, the British troops were exonerated. Now, this is the exact type of case, having seen the video myself of the unlawful killing of innocent citizens in Baghdad. You have to see that this judge is fighting for the machine and has fought for the machine. And now he is the one of 2 judges that will decide his fate at this appeal hearing. A rigged game? You decide. Now, you might be thinking, what is the actual case against him? You've heard that he's with WikiLeaks and their publication released stacks of information exposing war crimes and criminal information. More prolifically, they've released tons of classified information that has really showed government malfeasance and malpractice. So you can understand why the system and the authorities may want to keep this man in jail. However, that doesn't mean that he's committed a crime. Now, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is being prosecuted for publishing sources' names involved in the release of information, not his political opinions, according to the United States lawyers that were speaking on Wednesday during the court case. They said that he was not being persecuted or prosecuted, Freudian slip there, for publication of the leaked materials themselves, but for aiding and conspiring with former US Army intelligence officer Chelsea Manning to unlawfully obtain them, disclosing the names of sources and putting those individuals at risk of harm. So the key arguments that the US are making is firstly that these documents were obtained unlawfully through hacking or aiding and abetting hacking. And by the way, this is a key distinction for the case, because you would expect or want to see evidence that Assange himself was involved in the hacking, because if a third party hacked or released information that is classified, then the crime is done by the whistleblower, not by the publisher. So that's a really important variable, but they're arguing that his involvement is complicit. And the second piece is around the release of names that could have put people's lives at risk. And this is on the basis that the names were supposedly released unredacted. But again, there's a whole chain of events there that would really, I would struggle to see stack up in court, because Julian Assange has been proven that he went to great lengths to redact that information, but it was later released via an actual book that gave away the secure key to this document, which actually released by 2 Guardian authors that actually released the full unredacted materials. So we're getting into detail, but the American attorneys argue that the leaks, as a result, endanger people's lives. But the defense and Assange's supporters argue that Julian Assange is a heroic journalist that's exposed US wrongdoing and now is being punished for doing so. They say that the extradition is politically motivated and a deliberate attempt to retaliate or punish and silence him for exposing US state-level crimes. Now, the defense said that WikiLeaks were responsible for the exposure of criminality on part of the US government on an unprecedented scale, including torture, rendition, extrajudicial killings, and war crimes. And again, think about what we know about the judge involved in this case, the kind of judge that would normally be defending those acts rather than defending those that expose them. Now, Fitzgerald, who's one of the key members of Assange's defense, argued that the US prosecution is motivated by state retaliation, and that this unprecedented prosecution seeks to criminalize the application of ordinary journalistic practices of obtaining and publishing true classified information of the most obvious and important public interest. And surely you and I would agree that exposing state-level criminality is of the utmost importance, particularly in the times that we live in right now. We could have really done with an Assange during the course of COVID, taking this classified information that we're starting to see in drip-fed information through the public inquiry in the United States, for instance. But coming to this point of politically motivated, because the United States attorneys are bullish on the fact that the defense, that Assange's attorneys are misrepresenting the case, and they're sticking to the fact that this is a criminal investigation, looking at the fact that Julian Assange aided and abetted the release of this information and the illegal release of this information and put people's lives in danger. Well, if that was the entire case, then why would the National Security Agency, the NSA, the CIA, and various other entities within the US government plot to murder Julian Assange? And this has been confirmed. In 2021, Yahoo News reported that CIA officials had drawn up options under Trump's administration for dealing with Assange, which included murder whilst he was in the London embassy. Surely it's difficult to argue that this is not a politically motivated offence in the face of this. This is not how any state should go about solving any potential criminal allegations. So what are the implications of this? So from my perspective, to me, the two major criminal allegations that are being made against him, I think the US would struggle to win in court. The danger is, if this trial goes to the United States, the game is pretty much rigged to eradicate Julian Assange and to ensure that he never sees the light of day again, or even worse, that he even breathes again. So you can see the interests of the machine are to bring him to the United States, where he's unlikely to face a fair trial, let's face it. But if he was to be trialed independently in an independent international court, then I think the United States would not have a leg to stand on when it comes to the two main charges that they're making. And if they are being bullish on that allegation that it is criminal charges, then, well, good luck in proving that he actually conspired to hack the Pentagon or the CIA. I think there's very little evidence from all the documentaries and information out there in the defense. And similarly, the redacted issue, it's very, very difficult, because where are the New York Times? Where's the Guardian? Where are these other publications that actually published this information? So the hard implication is this: if Julian Assange is extradited and eventually charged for what has been levied against him, it sends a clear warning sign to journalists and publishers that if you dare to publish state secrets or classified information or any major wrongdoing by specifically the United States government or the CIA or any of its entities, then you will face the most severe consequences. And he's already facing severe consequences from what we've heard about his state of incarceration in Belmarsh. And let's face it, he's been in Belmarsh for 5 years without this trial. So the implications are severe for free speech, for free press, but also our ability to hold states and governments and entities to account. This is vital that this case does not go to the United States, where he will almost categorically not face a fair trial. So it really must go to an appeal at a separate international court, the European Court of Human Rights, in order to put this to bed. But you can see how the machine is so strongly wired to try and wipe Julian Assange from the face of the planet. So it's not only to remove him as a threat, because let's face it, if he was free, I'm sure they'd attempt to put all kinds of sanctions upon him to stop him from doing what he's doing. But the wider implications is it sends a message to almost every media outlet in the world that you will not dare to take on the United States or any government, because it will set a precedent that you are unable to challenge that state power, even when there was gross misconduct, gross criminality, and crimes of a global proportion, like we've witnessed over the last few years. So this is why this case is so vital. So we'll be tracking this case. As I said, I was in London last week outside the courtroom. It's a case that's been on my horizon since I can remember, but it's only in the recent 12 months, given what we've learned from the last 2 years and the importance of exposing state-level criminality, how important this case is. So if you're not familiar with the case, hopefully this has given you an interesting primer. Like I said, I've taken tons of notes here, so apologies I didn't have my full attention with you as I was doing that. I just wanted to make sure I'm getting the dates and timelines right on this, but there's so much more you can learn. So my message to you, let's keep Julian Assange free. Please keep track of this case, and let's please stand together to free Julian Assange. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please do, if you're interested in helping to create a free, prosperous, and peaceful world, head over to freehumanity.org, join our mailing list, and keep up to date with what we're doing, because we're going to be joining the fight to help keep Julian Assange free, amongst many other issues in this crazy time that we live in. So thanks again for tuning in. Please hit the share button, tag your friends. We really must get this message out there.